Welcome, everyone. Pleasure to be here today and an honor to have these folks here. I'm going to do quick bios for folks who are watching remotely, not here in the room. I think everyone here in the room probably doesn't need introductions, but others might. So President Maric leads Connecticut's $1.5 billion public flagship university with 5 campuses, more than 30,000 students, and an extensive network of research and service endeavors, including UConn Health. President Maric is known worldwide for her work on catalytic applications in fuel cells, batteries, and sensors, and throughout her career has received numerous awards, truly numerous awards for innovation and leadership in Japan, Canada, and the US. Thank you for making the time. You've been a great supporter of the program since the very beginning. And Dan, thank you also for making the time. Dan serves as the state of Connecticut's first Chief Innovation Officer, and just the other day was nominated to be Commissioner of DECD. In this role, he serves as an advocate for the innovation economy throughout Connecticut, focusing on economic growth, workforce development, and job creation. Prior to entering public service, Dan was a tech investor for 25 years, investing in high-growth, innovative companies in software, consumer, and fintech that went on to create tens of thousands of jobs. So thank you for making the time in your incredibly busy schedule. If there are other appointments you'd like to announce today, I'd be happy to. All right, so Dan, since you're a guest on campus today, we'll start with you. The Hartford Business Journal mentioned that you had considered taking a position with the federal government, but that Governor Lamont convinced you to stay here in Connecticut. So just curious on your take on what the opportunity is in Connecticut, what you want to prioritize, how you see the role of the state versus the role of federal government in innovation and entrepreneurialism.
Yep. Happy to. And first of all, thank you for having me. Thank you, Radenka, for our continued partnership. It's my first time on the UConn campus. It's absolutely incredible to see it. So glad I got to spend the day here. So the story is correct. I started this journey, as they say, because I was talking about a potential federal appointment. As part of that process, I met with the governor, honestly and candidly, just to get his advice, and it was really advice around this particular potential appointment. And he said to me, he said, look, if you really care about this, and this we were talking about was impact. I was talking about how I had 25 years in the private sector. I'm viewing this as 25 years in the public sector, God willing, with a truly long-term view of how to make the most impact. He said, if you really care about that, don't go federal. Everyone does, because that's where the headlines happen, and you're going to get frustrated, things are going to move incredibly slowly, and you're going to come back to me anyway. So skip that step and just meet my team. And so I did meet his team. I found his team, by the way, now my team too, to be incredibly strong, people that I felt like I could really work with. And we ultimately settled in on this newly created position. I did call him back and I said, I don't see a position that makes sense given my background. He said, oh, no, we'll create it. And so in partnership with Commissioner Dom, the current Commissioner of Economic and Community Development, we created this position, Chief Innovation Officer. And the message we really wanted to send, and we take this quite seriously, is the innovation economy is something as an administration we want to prioritize. We do have an Office of Manufacturing led by a Chief Manufacturing Officer, who was incredible, by the way, Paul Lavoie. And we want to send that same message about the growth industries. By the way, with this new appointment as Commissioner of the DECD, I will be retaining that title. I don't want to send the message that this matters to us and then 4 months later say, just kidding. But I would love to find a successor. So if anyone's in the room is interested, please come talk to me. In terms of what I saw in the state of Connecticut, why I got excited about this, and I have this thesis that I've been talking about. And the thesis is that the pandemic rewrote the rules. None of us went around hoping for a global pandemic. But coming out of it, as a society, we got kind of retrained that there's more flexibility in terms of where one might choose to live. The geographic relationship between employer and employee is evolving. I don't think it goes away. But if you're no longer required to come into a concrete block 5 days a week, you have more flexibility about where you choose to live. Why not choose to live in a place where the quality of life is high, where the quality of education is incredibly high, where it's a great place to raise your family? All the reasons why, frankly, my wife and I chose to move here in 2011. And we're seeing it. So this isn't just a thesis. So if you look at our GDP growth last year, we grew 7th fastest in the country. That's faster than any other state in the region, not to pick on other states, but that's outsized. It's faster than the country as a whole. We haven't been in the top 10 since 2004. So that's a big deal. Second thing is population trends. We're seeing people move here. So the last 2 years, our population has gone up. Every other state in the region it's going down. They're losing people. And by the way, we're gaining people from places like Massachusetts and New Jersey and Illinois and New York. And again, not to harp on any other state, but I think what's happening is the decision of where to live is democratizing. It's becoming more individually driven, and people are voting with their feet and their wallet to move here. Last point, I know I'm going on too long. What I'm seeing is also renewed energy. Now, I still get a fair amount of skepticism as I travel around the state. And so the speech I'm trying to give is one about optimism. Let's ditch that skepticism, even though I know why it exists, and let's seize upon this moment with all of this energy, this influx of energy, this influx of people, and start to really make sure that we're prioritizing and catalyzing this kind of growth. And I will tell you that the governor and this administration is deeply aligned around this. We all recognize that this is our moment, and we do intend to capitalize on it.
Thanks. Let's think about that at the university level. Like before you were named interim president and then president, you served as the vice president of research, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And the university has many innovation initiatives, TCS, TIP, CCEI, Hillside. So can you tell us what you think the role of a university is in innovation and entrepreneurship, and how UConn's approach is unique, and how you'd like to see it evolve?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Before I answer your question, I want to welcome everybody who is in this room. I want to thank business people who are here, who want to spend time to learn what is new. I want to thank Dan for taking these challenging 2 roles, not only one. I'm in his camp about optimism. I'm very optimistic about innovation, Connecticut and UConn in general. I think we live in fabulous state. We are not only geographic point between New York and Boston. I want to talk more what happened in this state. We are making documentary about innovation in Connecticut at UConn. And the reason that I came to UConn in 2010, the Governor Malloy was looking for 10 experts in the world in the clean energy. And I knew that Connecticut has a history, tradition, manufacturing capacities, innovative capacity to move forward. So I like to tell the story as a president, and I'd ask people, what do you know about innovation, clean energy in Connecticut? What do you know about UConn? And people say, Husky. I said, what else? They are silent. So I said, we failed to tell the story. And before I said what we are doing, I think the most important is to celebrate history, tradition, and knowledge that you have. So in 1969, we worked with the Hamilton standards to put the man on the moon. So we have Apollo space shuttle and fuel cells that were developed with faculty from mechanical engineering, thermodynamics, who taught how to make those, to provide electricity and water for the crews. UConn faculty, if you go to archives and look, the first solar panels on the White House had been put by UConn faculty. How many in this room know this fact? Okay. This is that's where is the problem. We've done it, but nobody knows. So then we have easy job to do. So when it comes, science and innovation make a breakthroughs. And that is where university is instrumental, to make these breakthroughs and to push forward. We have to communicate, we have to educate, we have to innovate, we have to bring people who can invest in our students, in the startup, like Steve, you and your team, together with JIT, you saw potential that you can have. And I want also to emphasize how important was a state investment that you are sitting in this room, because this will not happen without big vision. There is over 80 million in equipment, and there is no company that will these days invest 80 million in equipment to be able to diagnose and tell you how things work. 80% of Connecticut economy is small and medium-sized companies. They are short on people, they're short on equipment, and they need to advance their product. So the role of university is helping economy as a state land grant, educating workforce, innovate, and be entrepreneurial. And entrepreneurial in today's world is a must. and that's what we want to achieve. And that's when I became Vice President for Research. It was Vice President for Research, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship. This is what we are teaching our students, because we have to bring innovation for the public benefit.
That's great. Radenka just touched on kind of on the ecosystems, small companies and others. So we have many great partners in this program from throughout the ecosystem: Green Bank, Pura, CTI, and especially Oni and Nick and the team at CTNext that you know well. Can you talk about the ecosystem, where you think the ecosystem is strong, where there might be gaps, where there might be low-hanging fruit, and how you want to think about it?
Yeah, well, first I'll comment on just how I think the ecosystem has evolved, and it'll dovetail on my earlier comments, which is, we as state actors, and I think as kind of contributors to the ecosystem broadly, have generally focused on physical place as a mechanism for innovation. So this is, building startup space and co-working space, and oftentimes incubators or accelerators will have an attachment to a physical space. And look, I still think that matters. You need space, you need density for innovation to happen. You can't wave and just say, go innovate. You have to have the inputs fostered, and you have to have collaboration, ideation, the things that happen when people come together. That got interrupted by the pandemic. It made it much more difficult for people to get together. And then I think, as I said before, I think the pandemic redefined the concept of place. And so what I've seen in terms of how our ecosystem has evolved is we've started to see the formation of more formal and informal networks disassociated with any physical place. As I go around the state and speak, I end up meeting with these organizations that I didn't even know existed, quite honestly. That might be, it might be co-located around a certain region of the state. It might be sort of co-located around a certain industry. We see vertical networks forming. And I think that's really important, because if that is the direction we're going in, what that says is we need to reprioritize how we spend our time and our resources. Let's stop trying to go to places to create where entrepreneurs might come and create. Let's just go to where the entrepreneurs are. And I think that's a different change in mindset, but I think it's the right change in mindset. And actually, you mentioned CTNext. I think that is where their vision has changed over the last 5 years, and I think it's the right direction. Focusing more on entrepreneurial-led activity, let them lead the way, and then going and supporting. And where a state can be somewhat helpful and supportive is just around the connective tissue. I use this human anatomy analogy way too much, so forgive me. But I think of the concept of building an ecosystem as muscle building. It's a long-term exercise. It takes consistent applied leadership. But if you do it right, you end up with a risk-tolerant culture that will pay off generations for the public good. I consider that to be a public good. So the way you do that is you start to align those resources, and you play that concept of connective tissue. You can play, as a state actor, an organizing and catalyzing role, and I view that as very much part of my job description.
Radenka, you have said previously, like thinking about the local ecosystem, which is what we're talking about primarily here today, but you've also said that climate change is a global problem, and therefore we need to have an international perspective. And how can the university kind of help foster that?
I think, climate change is a global problem, but politics are local. And when fire happens in Canada, it impacts the quality of life regardless where you are. So we have to innovate, and innovation is leveraging on anything that is happening in the world. So we have to partner with Japan, Korea, Israel, Canada, and say, where are you, and how do we advance together? Because investment in the innovation and technology deployment is huge. And for climate change, there are a few things. One is the new technologies and demonstration, deployment, and adoption of the new technologies. The another one is education. We do not educate enough workforce in academia these days to be ready for this climate change, starting from electrochemistry, corrosion, understanding the batteries, and we became accustomed to the quick solution. Give me quick solution, and there is no quick solution. There is a roadmap, and we have to look how the roadmap in US aligns with the roadmap in Japan, with the roadmap in Europe. What are the investments that we can leverage? What are the things that we can do together? Because for any country in particular, it's going to be very expensive. It's going to be small, incremental, and it will not yield the results. So there is going to be the period of transition that is going to be painful, but we are all going to experience that.
We're here now for the showcase for the companies in the second cohort, and one final question for both of you before we turn it over to Cody and the founders. Dan, this program to date has had a lot of kind of broad focus areas: adaptation, mitigation, energy, human factors, social factors. How do you think a program like this can best help kind of the efforts that you're leading to contribute to the innovation ecosystem, to entrepreneurialism? What kind of the goals that you have set out? How can we support that through a program like this most effectively?
Yeah, if you think about what a program like this does, is it aggregates ideation, and that is an energy that I would love to export. So I think it's incredibly important that it's happening here. But what I would say to everyone involved is there is an ecosystem and a community here that would benefit from your energy. Actually, outside of climate change, which I, by the way, totally acknowledge needs focus, and I'm glad they're focused there. But really just thinking about it as you have a role to play not only in changing the world as it relates to climate change, but if you want it, you also have a role to play for others. Actually saying to others, I'm going through this journey and I would love to do it with you. I would love to actually talk about my challenges and see if I can help you solve yours. So there's sort of 4 themes that we're kind of spending time in and around as it relates to the innovation ecosystem. It's access to capital, it's access to talent, which is obviously a big part of higher ed. It's networks and networking, what I talked before about these formal and informal networks, but then it's also mentorship. How do you do what you do? And what I want people to hear as they ideate here is that there is a broader picture and a broader support network that you can both pull from and give back to. And by the way, again, I view my office's role as one of the important points of it as helping to have others see that, just see the resources that are available to them, and frankly also the broader ecosystem that's at work.
And so for UConn, we've worked together on developing the program up till now and the theme areas. Where would you like to see kind of a future cohort focus? Are there specific areas to go deep on, whether that's hydrogen, fuel cells, scope 3, quantum?
I think we are going through the period of transition. So understanding what is that transition and how the startup and seed funding can work and leverage on the large companies, like wherever source wants to go, where big companies want to go, because that period of transition is instrumental. And we also have to look the circular economy. We have to look from where raw materials are coming, what is the cost of manufacturing, how we can apply it, how we can demonstrate to community, what are the policies that we work on, and then how we recycle. So and recycling is a very important component. Hydrogen is going to be around 20% of the solution. There is not going to be one solution. It's going the right solution at the right price for the right demography. And the solution in Canada with the hydropower is going to be different than the solution in Connecticut. But one important thing is educate the public. So whenever I say hydrogen, people say it will explode. So people don't understand the energy density. People don't understand that if you have collision with your hydrogen car, that the flame shoots up. It is the same like when the electrical car explodes and you have the firefighters with the hoses and water coming. You cannot distinguish that way. So as education and in universities, we should not miss an opportunity to educate consumers, public, and our students. And then we have to be more prone for technology deployment and demonstration to educate politicians and people who are decision makers when it comes to policy, to have experience, to have the platform where they can ask the questions, and how we share information. So artificial intelligence and other things will help us to get there.
Well, thank you both for taking the time. We could go on for a while. We have barely even touched on how to partner with industry and other topics, but we're going to turn it over to Cody and the founders and hear what the companies have been doing for the last few months. So, round of applause, everyone, for thanks again for taking the time.
Thank you.